Okay, guys, if you are already reading chess books, I have a few tips for you. But more importantly, if you still don't know how to read chess books, I definitely, I definitely have a few tips for you. So let's get straight into it. What you see over here is my phone. I have many of my books on my phone, and I read directly from them, and I reproduce the moves on the chess.com board. Now, the way that I really like to do it is on a physical chessboard, but sometimes I don't feel like doing it there. I want to do it quicker or I want to save it after whatever I reproduce, so I do it over here. Now, the most important question that I wanted to address is this one in front of you guys. Do I use a chessboard? The answer is yes. Two types of chess books that I want you to get familiarized with. And I'm talking about books like this one where they show you a position and then they give you the answer, or there are books where they show you entire games. And let's start with the very first one. So the first one, you're going to see something like this. And guys, if you see me looking down, I'm here. I'm just looking at my phone, okay? So this one over here is the first kind of book. So you have a position that they want you to work on. And then a little bit down here, you're going to see the solution. And this is the part that I know you're getting confused with, the notation part, right? But let me give you a few tips before we get to that part. Number one, the first thing that I like to do myself is try to memorize this position and then reproduce it on the board. And let me do that with you here quickly for you to get an idea of what I do in order to memorize this position. And guys, this is something that we talked about on lesson 40 something when we did some exercises that helped us with this, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to understand the relation among the pieces on the board. So I'm going to start with the white pieces. So I look at this position and I'm thinking, my king is castled with the 3 pawns in front of it. This is the natural castle that we have, the classical, with a weakness on the back rank. Then there's a pawn on e3 that is defended by the pawn on f2. So I have 4 pawns on the king side. Of course, my king is where it should be when it castles. My queen is on e2, defending the pawn on f2 and the pawn on e3. So that's going to help me remember where my queen is defending those 2 pawns, f2 and e3. Then I have a rook on c3, and that rook is on an open file, and it is defending the pawn on e3. You see, I'm sort of like relating the pieces. You could also say my king is defending the 3 pawns, f2, g2, h2. And then finally, I have an isolated rook pawn on a2. And look at this, rook pawn. That rook pawn word is going to help me remember. And you guys might be, drop it, this is easy, what's the big deal? Well, when we disappear the pieces, it's going to be hard to remember, guys. So that's what the white pieces. Black pieces, they also have this classical castle, right, on the king side with the 3 pawns in front. And they have the queen on b6, defending the rook on d8. And now I realize both major pieces are on the open files trying to get to the back rank and checkmate me. And then finally, there's an isolated rook pawn on a7 that is defending my queen. So now when I remove this, guys, I'm going to recreate it. Do you have to do it for every tactic exercise that you do or every position? Not really, but just know that this is something that you could do. Okay, so let me go to it. My king side for the white pieces, I remember it was this classic that we have been victim to so many times, right? We get checkmated here. There was another pawn defended by my f pawn. I remember my queen was defending those two. And you see, guys, this makes it so much easier to remember. Then my rook was on c3 defending the e3 pawn. And finally, I had a rook pawn isolated on a2. I think this is it for the white pieces. Black pieces, they also had this classical castle on the king side. Then the queen was on b6 defending the rook on b8. And those two pieces were on open files to get to the back rank. And finally, rook's pawn defending the queen. So I think this is what we had. And that's the first tip that I have for you guys. It's going to help you a lot with your memory and of course the board in general. Now, the second thing that we're going to do is I'm going to work on it for 5, 10, 15 minutes. Calculate. Even if you calculate nonsense, it is going to help you a lot with your visualization, right? Now, I did that. I put this on the board. I worked on it for 10, 15 minutes. I couldn't find it. Well, now I'm going to look at the answer. And when I look at the answer, I'm going to see the pattern that I couldn't figure out. So that's a new pattern for my database, right? So if I go back here, let me scroll down to the answer. And guys, this is the part where a lot of you get confused. The main thing that you need to know is that the answer, the one that you're interested on, is going to be anything that is in bold, right? So you can see here that, and by the way, guys, this book, I like it a lot because it's not only, okay, this is the answer, correct, incorrect. They actually give you a lot of information for each exercise. So feel free to check it out. Now, and by the way, you could find all of the books that I recommend in the description of every video. Now, with that said, let's get to it. So, first paragraph, it says, Black can get a better game after Queen B1. Now, whenever you see the move number and then three dots, it means that it's Black pieces to move. The white pieces move is those three dots, right? Represented by the three dots. So this means it's Black pieces to move. So they're saying Queen B1, but guys, all of that is a variation that they want you to know of, but it's not the main line. The main line starts on this bold move, one Queen B2 exclam, right? So this is the part where using a physical chess board could get tricky, but it's also the part that I like. If you have a physical chess board, you have to reproduce this, like, right? So they're saying, let me actually make it Black to move. Let me put it on the board. Now, if we go again over that first variation, this is not the answer. It's not in bold, but they want you to go over it, right? So if I'm doing it here on chess.com, it's easy to reproduce it and then put it back using my keyboard. But if you're on a physical chessboard, you have to either do it in your head, which is excellent. Even if you can't, because you're not experienced, try. It's going to help you a lot with your visualization, right? So try to go through the moves. It's going to get blurry, but it doesn't matter. Try it. Or you could just do it on the board. And when you do it on the board, it's going to get destroyed, the original position. So you have to remember to put it back. Guys, all of this struggle, it is tedious, but it's going to help you a lot, okay? So that's one thing to keep in mind. Now, I'm going to go straight to the main move, to the answer. It is in bold, so it is Queen B2. And then they are saying, they give you some information there. And then number 2, you see, number 2 for the white pieces is going to be Rook C8. So this is the answer. If I wanted to continue with the main line, the answer, I go to the next bold, which is 2 Queen B1, okay? So again, we have Queen B2, then Rook C8, and now they're saying the best move here is Queen B1, forcing them to block. And after this in-between move with a check, we just collect the rook. And just like that, guys, I went over the first answer to the exercise. So this is how it goes. Most of the books are going to follow this pattern. Now, there's a second type of book that I want you to also get familiarized with, and it's a book like this one. This book, I like it to complement the other one because, as you can see, it's not just one position and that's it. Here, they give you entire games. And for this one, for the most part, you're just going to read through the book, right? So read the first paragraph. When you get to the moves, you just reproduce them. E4, E5, then knight F3, and you just go through that. When you get to the diagram, it means it is a critical position. Before I show you a little bit more about this, there's one thing I do sometimes that you guys might find interesting. One thing that I like to do is whenever I open the book, I skip the moves and everything. I go straight to the first diagram, and I try to evaluate the position, get a feeling for it, and then compare my thoughts to what they say in the book, right? So you don't have to do it again. You don't have to do it every time, but you could give it a try, right? And then the only two things is that with these games, that you have the entire game, guys, you could apply the 2x2, the 3x3, the 4x4 technique that we've talked about so many times. And for those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, basically you could reproduce the game one move at a time like we're doing normally, or you could use a 2x2 where you read the first two moves and visualize them on the board without actually moving the pieces, right? So we got E4, E5, knight F3, knight C6. So I visualize that on the board. Only when I see it clearly, I'm going to move the pieces. So E4, E5, knight F3, knight C6. And then I do the same thing with the next two moves and so on. If this becomes easy for you, then you do 3x3 and then 4x4. And before you know it, you're going to be able to do an entire game in your head. It's going to take time, but this is the way to get there, guys. And then finally, I wanted to show you here as well. If we go back to another game, let me see down here. As you can see, this game starts also with E4, E5, but as you go through the game, guys, over here on the right, you're going to see there is a variation, right? So move number 22 is bishop D6, C takes D6, but they're saying, what if the black pieces, you see the three dots, that means it's black to move. So what if the black pieces had done 22 instead of c takes d6? What if they had done king g7, right? So this is a variation that you have to either reproduce in your head if you could do it, but even if you can't, try it, or you could just do it on the board and then just simply put it back, okay? But guys, this is said again, many of you already are doing these things, but I still keep getting questions like, do I use a chessboard, or I don't understand the notation? And don't forget, we had a lesson very early about chess notation, so that's going to be lesson number 9. With that said, guys, don't forget to check out my book recommendations in the description, and I will see you on lesson number 145.